Yesterday, the Associated Press published a series of articles detailing a range of ethical failures by the Supreme Court of the United States. The reports detail justices' involvement in fundraising at colleges and universities, the use of Supreme Court staff members to push sales of books, donor-funded teaching positions that double as all expense-paid vacations. The Supreme Court is now on recess, at home with their families and traveling on vacation. I wish them many sunny days, but even if the sun's shining, there's still a shadow over the Supreme Court. So for several months now, there's been a steady flow of reports documenting how the members of our nation's highest court have failed to live up to the public trust that they have been given. Justice Clarence Thomas has traveled the world on billionaire Harlan Crow's yacht and private jet. Crow bought the home of Justice Thomas's mother and allowed her to continue living there rent-free. He even paid for the education of Justice Thomas's minor relative. None of this was included in Justice Thomas's financial disclosure forms. Then we learned that Justice Samuel Alito took an all-expense-paid luxury fishing trip to Alaska. He traveled there on a private jet of billionaire hedge fund manager Paul Singer and stayed at the fishing lodge of conservative donor Robin Arkley. Justice Samuel Alito didn't disclose any of it to the public. In fact, he dismissed when it was discovered one trip on a private jet, saying that didn't really count because, in fact, the seat on the jet would have been empty if he didn't sit in it. What an argument from a Supreme Court justice. The solution to the problems we're seeing at the Supreme Court is a simple one. They need, like every other court in America, to adopt an enforceable code of ethics. Every federal judge in the country is bound by a code of ethical conduct and a set of ethics rules and enforcement mechanisms, except for the nine justices of the Supreme Court who sit across the street from this building. I first urged Chief Justice Roberts to adopt a binding, enforceable code of conduct over 11 years ago. Sadly, he didn't accept my suggestion, and he continues to ignore the issue today. This is the John Roberts Court. It will go down in history as the John Roberts Court. He has the power, and I believe the moral obligation, to straighten up this mess and restore the integrity of the court. When the court reconvenes in October, there's a tradition for someone to announce, oyez, 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 this honorable court. How can they call it an honorable court in light of these disclosures? I was honestly believed, Madam President, that before they broke for this vacation period, that Justice Roberts would announce reforms that really count and finally start to restore the integrity and reputation of the court. But so far, nothing. Next week, the Senate Judiciary Committee, which I chair, will vote on the Supreme Court Ethics Recusal and Transparency Act. This bill, introduced by Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, would require the Supreme Court to adopt an enforceable code of conduct. It would also add new recusal and transparency requirements under the federal law. The legislation does not distinguish between justices appointed by a Democratic president or a Republican president. It requires a code of conduct enforceable against all justices. I was disappointed to learn today that one of the Republican leaders has publicly come out in opposition to any enforceable code of ethics established by the Judiciary Committee on the U.S. Supreme Court. What is he thinking? We live by those standards of disclosure and limitation and enforcement of ethics. And despite our unpopularity in many public opinion polls, think about if this Congress lived by the same standard or lack of standards as the U.S. Supreme Court. By making sure the highest court in the land doesn't have the lowest ethical standards, our legislation will be a key first step in restoring confidence in the Supreme Court. The markup will be next week. I sincerely hope before that time, Chief Justice Roberts will step up and accept the responsibility for his Supreme Court to establish credible standards of integrity. And I yield the floor.